Good evening, my name's Bianca and you are joining me from my home because the doors at the yard are shut at the moment, but we are still open. And tonight you join us for our story time and we're reading a bit of a stretch, The Diaries of a Prisoner. So sit back, grab your cup of tea and let's see what happens to Chris in this, I was going to say episode, but chapter is the right word because it's not a TV show that I'm in. It just feels like it is because I'm on your computer and you're on my screen. Let's get started. Lockdowns and Love Actually, Chapter 2. In which I progress through 3 different prison wings, with the bagging up getting steadily worse. The authorities continue to block my son from visiting, and the separation becomes unbearable. Things that I've learnt. 1. The futility of submitting application forms. 2. How to phone home. 3. The delicate notion of shikatet. I get trapped in a temple of porn with a deranged Romanian, but fortuitously I jump on the property ladder into Little Hampstead. The 15th of July. At noon, we are opened up for lunch. In the queue, I check out my new neighbours, who are mostly twice my size. Many seem to be from Eastern Europe. The food is a bit better, and the savoury workers they're jolly. One of them recognises Ted. Ted, what's going on? Fuck me, it's Mike, Ted ventures. Yeah, mate, we were in Spring Hill. Mike is about 18 stone and has a really impressive beard. Ted is in his element. Of course, that must have been 6 years ago. How you doing? Mike smiles coyly. Back in on an 18 stretch. What about you? I went on my toes to dodge the confiscation. I just got busted in Spain. Oh, nightmare. Have you got everything you need? Just moved in, but there's no cunting kettle. Let me see what I can do. I totter around the end of the hot plate, struggling to carry all of the various items. Suddenly, I feel a hand on my arm. My blood runs cold. I assume I'm getting jumped. I turn to see Mike, wedging a small kettle under my arm. He gives me a wink, and I mouth, "Thank you." Back in the cell, I make a cup of tea and bounce off the walls with happiness. This emotional yo-yoing continues for some time. A small setback will send me off a cliff, and a nugget of good fortune, well, it feels like I've won the lottery. 16th of July. The authorities are still probing Kit's criminal record, so I have my next visit with Lottie on her own again. It's brilliant to see her, but we are running on completely different clocks. I have to speed up massively to keep up with her. I'm exhausted by the end. As our visitors leave the hall, I chat to an Australian called Scott. He lives in Trinity, the separate CCAT unit, and is effusive about the better conditions. It's so much better than the main wings. We usually get gym about 7:30, do education and jobs most of the day. We're out practically all of the time. This sounds like paradise compared to my current regime. Later on, I ask an officer if I can move to Trinity, and he looks at me, and then looks at me up on Nomis, and that is the Creek Prisoner database. Sorry, mate, you're still uncategorised. You can't move to Trinity until you're at least a Category C. 17th of July. It's Kit's birthday, and I hit an all-time low. I still haven't received a phone pin. I'm unable to call out. Brandishing a photo of Kit, I find the only other female officer on duty. Sorry to disturb you, miss. Female screws are all called miss, like we were at school. It's my son's 4th birthday, and I can't call home. She lets me use her office phone, and I get a couple of minutes with Kit while he blows out the candles. The officer is furious, but I'm still without phone. Wandsworth is the shittest prison I've ever worked in. There are never any fucking staff, and the governors are all cunts. She tells me to fill out another phone pin application and promises to take me to the relevant office. I get another huge bundle of letters and printed emails. I'd arranged to take Kit on holiday to France with my friends from university. Well, and obviously they've gone without us. People are Facebooking photos of me playing with everybody's kids on previous trips. It feels as close as you can to being dead without actually dying. I've always wanted to know what it would be like to attend my own funeral, and I guess this is the next best thing. 18th of July. Theresa May has been anointed as Prime Minister and she unveils her first cabinet. Liz Truss is promoted to Justice Secretary, taking ultimate responsibility for the nation's prisons. This surprises everybody, and not least Liz herself, who walks into Downing Street looking as if she knows as much about prisons as I did when I walked into Wandsworth. Truss announces that she will continue the reform programme that was the brainchild of her predecessor, Michael Gove. I am under no illusions about the scale of the challenge we face. I am clear the vital work of the prison reform will continue at pace. There's a box that says, Reformed Characters. I arrived in Wandsworth just as it became the very first reform prison, spearheading a new radical policy designed to tackle escalating prison crisis. Suicides, assaults, self-harm, reoffended were at a record high. And the reform programme was intended to solve all of these problems. It gave an unprecedented power to the new governor, Ian Bickers, allowing him to control over £35 million worth of budget. The autonomy over how the prison was run. Bickers was quoted as saying, Wandsworth was not fit for purpose, and he pledged to transform the jail in 18 months. Spoiler alert, things didn't exactly go to plan. Watching TV brings out Ted's ugly side, and he keeps unleashing intolerant tirades at the news. I reluctantly have to reappraise his political stance from ardent Brexiteer to borderline racist. The news show a boat overloaded with refugees, and Ted shouts, "Let the fucking cockroaches drown." My middle-class, liberal sensibilities go into a tailspin. I instinctively want to challenge these outbursts, but Ted has been my prison mentor and protector, and I don't want to poison the atmosphere. I'm also terrified that his xenophobic ranks will be overheard. White Brits are definitely an ethnic minority in Wandsworth. There are a lot of black and Muslim guys on this wing. One afternoon, the BBC reports a surge in knife crime, and Ted carps, "It's just a bunch of black bastards stabbing each other." There is a sudden explosion outside our door. "What are you saying about my people? I'm going to cut you up." Through our observation panel, I can see the bulging red eyes of a seething prisoner staring in. He looks like he's been infected by the rage virus, and 28 days later, and my heart stops. Even Ted goes white, and then we hear a huge laugh. "Ted, I only messing with you, innit? It's Reggie. Remember me?" Ted looks as though he's just been given the all clear from a cancer scare. "Oh, yeah, Reggie. How's it going?" Reggie, too, knows Ted from a previous prison, and I meet him in the exercise yard later on. He's about 6'6" and appears to have fallen into a cauldron of steroids as a baby. He tells us about a recent run-in with the Tornado Squad, the double-hard officers who were sent in to quell riots. While the screws got tooled up outside Reggie's cell, he had covered himself in baby oil, a technique pioneered by veteran prison lunatic Charles Bronson, and that prevents anyone from getting a grip on you. He also squirted the oil all over the floor. He acts out the scene where the 3 Tornado officers stormed his cell and went arse over tit. This scrape got him carted off to the block, aka the segregation unit. While troublesome inmates are kept in total isolation, he is in stitches while he tells us his story. I am laughing out of nervous fear. We return to the cell and find a large sack of bananas on the floor. "That'd be for Mike," says Ted. "I did him a few favours back in Spring Hill. I don't really know what they were now." 19th of July. I finally get issued with my phone pin. When we're open for S&Ds, I run to the phone at the end of the landing and call Lottie and Kit. The wing is extremely noisy and I can't make out what Kit's saying. Oh, but it's an intense relief to hear his little voice. Before I came inside, we usually used FaceTime, and he doesn't really understand why he can't see me on the phone now. I've limited to 5 minutes per call, and the charges are stuck in the 1990s. I put £4 on my phone credit, and this gets burned up calling Lottie's mobile. But I resolve to hear Kit's voice every day. But this is no easy task. There's always a hefty queue for the phones, and scary prisoners frequently push in. If my call goes to voicemail, I'm blocked for calling again for another 10 minutes. I can easily blow all of my S&Ds trying to get through. 20th of July. The incessant lockdown gets most awkward when we need to take a crap. Basic human decency dictates that this activity is best undertaken alone. But nature eventually prevails over dignity. Sometimes we've just got to get on with it. And I'm introduced to the art of shittiquette. How to lay a turd without being too smelly and being considerate to your cellmate. This afternoon, Teddy randomly turns up the TV volume and then he secretly, quietly, discreetly disappears behind the curtain. I don't realise what he's up to and I get increasingly angry at the Victoria Derbyshire show, which is discussing a Twitter spat between Kanye West and Taylor Swift. Why do we have to watch this crap, I demand? So that you don't have to listen to mine, Ted perks up. I'm chopping one off. I only put it on so you don't have to hear my noises. I think I'd rather hear you having a shit, to be perfectly honest, I reply. The A-Wing shower room is marginally less revolting than the one on E-Wing. The floors are still awash with detritus. It's a major faff dealing with my glasses while I precariously balance them on a nearby pipe. I always scrub myself raw, as I've got no idea when I'm going to be able to shower next. Today, my frantic washing knocks my glasses into the razors and dental floss. One of the lenses pops out, and this is a total disaster. It's my only pair, and I am practically blind without them. I instinctively bend over to rescue them, realising, too late, that this is the last thing that anyone should do in a prison shower. I hunt through the trash with my arse in the air, really wishing I'd worn some pants into the shower. I find the lens, but need to find something to screw the frame back together. There was some maintenance staff on the top landing, and I tap on one of their shoulders. Hi guys, sorry to bother you. Any chance I could borrow a small screwdriver? They shake their heads and they walk away. Quickly. I recount this to Ted, who laughs. They thought you wanted to stab someone, you dipshit. Instead, I cannibalise a biro top and manage to twist it into the tiny screw. It's unlikely it's going to stay in for very long, and I fill in my first of many healthcare applications, asking to see an optician. At or around this time, I started showering with my pants on. 21st of July. I ask an officer to look at my NOMIS file, which reveals that Kit still hasn't been authorised to visit me. Peering at the screen, I notice a big C next to my name. Does that mean I'm category C? Yep. Can I move to Trinity now? Yeah, sure, I'll put you on the list this afternoon. I break the news to Ted, who is furious that I'm abandoning him for pastures new. He is still uncategorised, so he won't be able to come with me. My impending departure leads to an uncomfortable atmosphere in the cell, and it's like the last days of a relationship. I pack my bag and things in silence. As the afternoon turns to evening, it becomes obvious that I'm not going anywhere today. I unpack, while Ted grins to himself. This uncertainty continues for a couple of days, and I turn into a wreck. Every time a screw approaches, I assume I'm about to move, and I jump off the bed, ready. Then the officer walks past without stopping, and I'm crushed. Ted is unsympathetic. It's not going to be any better over there, you know. I know this is just a bit of jealousy. Trinity is obviously superior, and I bite my tongue. 22nd of July. A female officer knocks and unlocks the door. Atkins, why aren't you ready? I haul my stuff into bags, and Ted helps me pack. Suddenly, we're friends again. I thank him for his kindness, and for making the start of my prison journey, well, bearable, I guess. We even stretch to a hug. I go down to the far end of the wing with 5 other prisoners. I'm giddy with excitement, and I can't wait to start a brand new life on Trinity. We're led out of the back door into blazing sunlight, and I lug my bags slowly towards a smaller building nearby. The officer leads us up the steps, and we go through a big rusty metal door. Inside is a slightly smaller version of where I've just left. The cell doors are the same, the banging is the same. I even recognise one or more of the colourful characters from E-Wing. Trinity is essentially a mini version of the main prison, a smaller doomed centre with 3 wings protruding from it. An officer, resembling the Milky Bar Kid, leads me to the K wing and up to K409. Sitting inside is a man in his 40s, jet black skin, and a deeply irritated expression. I offer him my hand, but he ignores it, and in broken English, he pleads with the officer not to move me into his cell. Milky Bar Screw tells him to lump it, and I drag my stuff over the threshold. My reluctant new cellmate is from Sri Lanka, and I work out that his name is Yogi. At least the cell is a pleasant improvement. It's got a kettle, a TV, and the bunks are built into the wall. The window actually opens to let in a nice breeze. And now that I'm on the top floor, I can just about see London's skyline by standing on the loo. It's Friday, and I can't wait for my canteen delivery. On my last order, I was allowed to spend a whopping £10. Half went on phone credit, and the rest I splurged on coffee, tomato ketchup, tin mackerel. Later on, an officer opens the door, accompanied by a couple of prisoners, handing out the canteen bags. Yogi's given in his, but there's nothing for me. Do you know what's happened to my canteen? Have you just moved here from A-Wing? The officer replies. Well, that's where your order was delivered to. So maybe it'll come across here Saturday. It never arrives. 23rd of July. It's Saturday and we're open up at 8:30 for S&Ds. This turns out to be only 45 minutes long, and that includes our exercise time. Yogi and I agreed to take turns watching the cell, and he goes off for a shower while I take the first shift. When he fails to return on time, I get increasingly agitated. He eventually saunters back after half an hour and finds my anger highly amusing. I run off, try to shower, and phone home in 10 minutes. The shower room is the worst, a total swamp. There's an exercise yard, and I dart into the sun. I don't even make a single lap before the officer calls time. And then we're locked up for the rest of the day. 24th of July. During D&Ds, I bump into Scott, the chatty Australian whose tales of Trinity lured me over here. He's wearing his own clothes, clutching a clipboard. How are you doing, Tiger? He asked with a massive cheesy grin. I do know that's a really rubbish Australian accent, so I shall remember not to do that next time. Apologies to all audiences. I have to say, this place is not living up to your glowing description. Geez, sorry about that. Scott starts rattling off details about my new home, and it becomes clear he's lived here for some considerable time. These are the 3 wings on Trinity, he continues. Your problem, you're on K-Wing, and that's where they keep all the nut jobs. Do not move to G-Wing, whatever you do. All the normal people, they're on H-Wing, and we get loads more time out on the cells. How do I get to H-Wing? Well, you need to catch one of the officers in a good mood. I'd strongly advise you to sign up for a course. Then you'll get unlocked for a free flow on weekdays. That's when inmates who have jobs and education will leave the wing. Later, I queue up to see an officer. Gov, I really think I belong on H-Wing. It's only enhanced prisoners who are on H-Wing. He looks me up. He just arrived. You are currently standard. He's referring to my IEP level, which dictates which privileges I can access. After 3 months, you can apply to be enhanced, and then you can move to H-Wing. This means I'm going to be stuck on K-Wing for at least another 9 fucking weeks. I'm dying to get stuck into my stack of books, but that's impossible to read as Yogi watches TV constantly and he has assumed control over the remote. This afternoon, we sit through Love Actually, which is comfortably my most hated film of all time. I've often joked that my idea of hell is being trapped in a room and forced to watch Richard Curtis films. And now that time has come. Yogi is chortling away, so I explained to him that the movie is a misogynistic fantasy. The female characters only exist to be courted by men, and it's furthering a deeply unequal neo-capitalist society. That does not convince him at all to change the channel. Yogi is also a ridiculously loud snorer, and I instinctively want to lean over and give him a mild kick. But on reflection, I realise that the snoring has its advantages, enabling me to have a cheeky wank while I know he's definitely asleep. 25th of July. On weekdays, our door is open at 8 a.m. for free flow, and Yogi heads out for his IT course, and I beg him to sign me up to the same class. He just smiles and slinks away. Hours later, an officer walks past and I call through the locked door, "Gov, Gov, is there any way I can get on a course? Any course? I'm going crazy in here." "Just fill out a general app." 27th of July. Even the smallest human contact is a blessing. Whenever anyone comes to the cell door, I leap up to greet them as though I'd been stranded on a desert island. This afternoon, an elderly staff member peers through the observation panel. He looks like a retired maths teacher, his glasses hanging around his neck on a cord. "I don't suppose you'd be interested in a workshop on dry lining?" he asks. "Yes," I reply a bit too forcefully. "Do you know what dry lining is?" "Yes." I say that again, fearing that my ignorance will bar me from the course. "Excellent. I won't have to waste my time explaining it to you. I'm going to put you on the list." He shuffles away, and I instinctively reach to my pocket for my iPhone to Google dry lining. This habit I really need to get out of. I don't even have any pockets, let alone an iPhone. 29th of July. I'm queuing outside the wing office when a prisoner marches to the front. "Marbles are shat in the showers again," he yells. I've thankfully already had a shower today, so I find this hilarious. But nobody else sees the funny side. Marbles is a tall Bangladeshi prisoner who is wandering around with his trousers halfway to his ankles. I eventually speak to an officer who reveals that Kit is finally allowed to come to Wandsworth. I race to the phone and call Lottie, and she applies the visit immediately. 31st of July. A slip appears under my door. "Activity allocated, dry lining, starting the 2nd of August. I'm over the moon, although no one is any the wiser about what dry lining is. I return from S&D's to find Yogi hurriedly packing his stuff. He cagily admits he's moving to H-Wing. I'm infuriated, as he isn't enhanced. I interrogate him about how he's escaped, and he reveals the room moves are organised in an office on the 2's landing. I sprint downstairs and burst through the door as politely as I can. One of the more affable officers is peering up at a huge wooden board on the wall that came straight out of a 1950s hotel. There are hundreds of little slots representing all of the cells on Trinity, and the cards showing where each prisoner lives. "Afternoon, Gov. My cellmate's moving to H-Wing. Are there any more spaces?" The screw looks at me quizzically, with one eyebrow raised. "Are you on full-time work?" I brandish my slip. "I'm about to start dry lining." "What is dry lining?" I'm not ready for this curveball. "Well, it's quite a commonplace these days. More and more prisons start to develop a it's good for long term." I peter out while the officer pursues the board. "You won't be able to share with your cellmate. He's moving in with someone else." I try to say bummer without sounding sarcastic. "There's one place free with a Romanian fella." "I'll take it." We never have any problems with Romanians. Always as good as gold. "Go and get your stuff downstairs prompto." He doesn't ask if I'm enhanced. He doesn't ask anything. I run back to the cell. Yoga's already gone and has snaffled the kettle, the remote control, and all my clear plastic bin bags. I don't really care. I'm just pleased. I'm not pleased, actually. I'm ecstatic to be joining the hallowed ranks of H-Wing. I chuck everything into a sheet, tie it up, and head downstairs. "You're in H319, says the officer. "You can make your own way there." H-Wing has an identical structure to K-Wing, but the atmosphere is distinctively calmer. I go to the freeze, the landing up, second, and find my cell. The door's locked, and the occupant is peering out through the observation panel. He has cropped blonde hair and a hard face, and he eyes me suspiciously. "You come here?" He speaks with a thick Eastern European accent. "Yes." "You smoke?" "No," and a smile. "You sure you don't smoke?" he asks a little louder. "I definitely do not smoke." He nods and disappears into the cell. A few minutes later, he returns to the door with a dark expression. "Do you smoke?" he demands again, and this throws me a bit because I thought we'd resolved that issue. "No, I don't smoke." I want to somehow prove that I haven't had a fag for a month. Hopefully, his insistence is due to his strong aversion to smoking rather than a serious mental illness. As soon as the officer opens the door, I enter my new home. I'm immediately overwhelmed by a deluge of pornography. I'd assumed that the internet had disseminated demand for porn mags, but this cell has clearly kept the market going. Every last bit of wall, and indeed the ceiling, is coated in tits and vaginas. There is smut on the inside of the cupboards, the underside of the bunk bed, even the window frames. Standing in the middle of it is a stocky, square-jawed man in his 40s, who introduces himself as Dan. I feel like we're going to have a better relationship with him than I did with Yogi. Why are you here? He grunts at me. I try to explain my fairly polluted crime, but he quickly gets bored. I ask him what he did prior to being in prison. He said he worked for London Underground. That's fascinating, I said brightly. Were you a train driver? His eyes narrowed. I was a pickpocket. Notwithstanding the saturation of porn, the cell is pretty clean. Dan gives me a bizarre guided tour, showing me the various scouring pads he uses for cleaning the dishes in the sink. The door opens in the afternoon, S&Ds, and he hands me a key to the cell. This is beyond thrilling. Now there's no need to stand guard. I head down to the ground floor landing, and Scott is marching around, patting people on the back. Welcome to the Ritz, he calls to me. Come and meet the rest of the White Collar Club. I follow him into the cell, which turns out to be enormous. It's basically two normal cells knocked together, and it resembles a small studio flat. There's a separate sleeping section and a big seating area with a large table. A group of guys are playing board games, and Scott introduces me to his cellmate Lance. He's around 30 and overly proportioned, both in height and girth, resembling an adult Billy Bunter fallen on hard times. Ah, you're Atkins, film chap. Where did you go to school? He has a loud public schoolboy manner that is utterly out of place. Scott and Lance have got this large cell as a perk for being listeners, prisoners trained by the Samaritans to comfort other inmates who are suicidal or self-harming. And their room also serves as a common room for any of the white-collar fraternity, and they insist that I'm welcome any time. 1st of August. Dan and I eat lunch side by side at the tiny desk in our cell. He makes a barbed comment about my elbows straining to his side at the table. I jovially point out that we have less than 2 feet of desk space each, so we shouldn't stress the odd roving elbow, but he throws an aggressive sulk. I remove a couple of pairs of tits from the wall by my bed so that I can put up photos of Kit. Dan gets quite cross, but he grudgingly allows me to stick limited pictures on top of the porn. This significantly diminishes the emotional impact of seeing my only son, as Kit is now engulfed in images of degraded women. Dan then ticks me off for using the wrong scouring pad to clean the sink. I usually give as good as I can get, but even now, misguidedly, I yelled at the prosecutor to grow up during my cross-examination in court, and I haven't learned anything. Dan looks like he's been in a few prison scrapes, so I just apologise. At least I can look forward to tomorrow, which is the start of my dry lining experience. 2nd of August. At 8 a.m, our door is unlocked for free flow. The landing is seething with dozens of inmates stomping around, while screws shout at everyone to hurry up. I've still got no idea what dry lining is or where it's situated. Thankfully, one of the White Collar Club, Nigel, is on the same course, so I tag along with him. We go to the back door into the open air. The main prison rooms loom in front of us, and round to our left is a line of decrepit, congregated iron buildings. One of the workshops has a sign outside, Bounce Back, Dry Lining. I'm reminded that Bouncing Back was the title of Alan Partridge's autobiography, in which he had a nervous breakdown and drove to Dundee in his bare feet. We go into the workshop, and I'm quite thrown by its huge size. A month trapped in a prison cell has made me really agoraphobic. There are a dozen other prisoners in the class, which is run by a strapping Russian builder called Yuri. It transpires that dry lining involves putting up internal walls and ceilings. The first few days are to be spent studying health and safety, and I diligently start filling in my folder. One of the other students, Dylan, talks throughout the lesson. He has a shaved head and angry ears, and is the last person you want to meet in a dark alley. And that said, you easily hear him rabbiting away from the other end of the alley, allowing you to leg it before you crossed his path. I find it difficult to concentrate on the working at high regulations while he noisily recounts how he outran 3 cops on the Hammersmith rooftop. At 11 a.m, someone shouts, "Free flow!" and we all head back to the wing, where we banged up over lunch. We then unlock for the afternoon free flow at 2:30, and I have another dry lining session until 4:15. H-Wing then has its S&Ds until 6, so I'm now getting about 6 hours out of the cell rather than 1. When I return home, Dan starts shouting at me for leaving the lights on. His anger is baffling. I can't fathom out why a Romanian pickpocket is so concerned about HMP Wandsworth's electricity bill. I point out that the problem is easily remedied by switching the light off. By him switching the light off. But that falls on deaf ears. A big bundle of letters and emails has been dumped on my bed. The mailroom is evidently as inefficient as the rest of the prison, as some of the correspondence is around 3 weeks old. I carefully open each one, savouring their contents. I suddenly realise that Dan, who's standing next to me, seething. He's got no mail. His girlfriend has promised to write to him, and he's convinced her that the letters got mixed up in my pile. I sift through them embarrassingly large stack of post, but it's all addressed to me. Dan seems quite upset, so I crack a light-hearted joke. "Don't worry, dude. I'll write to you." I immediately realise this was a hideous mistake. Dan's mood goes so black that I think the lights have actually dimmed, and I feel dozens of topless models eyeballing me reproachfully. I climb onto the top bunk and I try to open the rest of my mail in silence. After a few minutes, Dan starts rummaging around in one of his boxes. I peer down to see him painfully measuring our desk with a ruler. He then draws a line halfway with a pencil. He's marking out the UN's border between the North and South of Korea, it feels like. He twists a screw into the desk at the midway point, before flouncing the 2 feet back to his bed. I wait for a bit, and then gingerly climb down to the desk. It's bloody uncomfortable having a sharp screw right by my elbow, but I try to ignore it and start penning a letter to my brother. The minutes tick, and I don't hear anything from my cellmate, so I grab a quick glance behind me. Dan is certainly tucked up with his eyes closed, but he's not fast asleep. From the activity under his sheet, it's obvious that he's wanking furiously, about 3 feet from where I'm actually sitting. Now, admittedly, I did knock one out on K-Wing, but I had the decency to wait until Yogi was snoring. Dan has no such inhibitions, and I suspect he's trying to freak me out, which he has successfully done. I grab my letter and I scramble back up to the top of my bunk. 3rd of August. Dan starts to engage in bodily functions as loudly and as frequently as possible. I'm woken up by the sound of him having a crap, during which he hacks up phlegm for 10 seconds and then gobs it into the sink. He belches so loudly that it echoes around the cell, followed by a couple of explosive farts. At lunchtime, he waits until I'm eating before urinating without pulling the curtain. Elsewhere, this display of human sound would have been a source of amusement, even possibly an entry on Romanian's Got Talent. But in this small confined space, it's highly destabilizing. His next tactic is to refuse to say a single word to me. I'll ask if he wants the radio or TV on. He blanks me. And then, when I'm watching something, he grabs the remote control and changes the channel. Being locked up with Dan makes me feel physically threatened for the first time. I start to unravel, flinching every time my back is turned and I can barely sleep. At every stage of my Wandsworth journey, I convinced myself that the next step will solve all of my problems. Whereupon now, I've walked in on a whole new world of pain. 4th of August. I crawl into the dry lining workshop, totally wrung out. Nigel notices something is up, and I tell him about my nightmare cellmate. After class, I tiptoe back to the cell, bolt down my lunch, and sit on my bed feeling sorry for myself. Suddenly, Nigel appears from outside our locked door and grins. Martin's cellmate's just gone to an open prison. Do you want to move in with him? Martin is another white-collar guy whose cell is directly opposite Lance's and Scott's. Oh, fuck yeah, I cry out, My whole body lifts up as if I'm being pulled by an invisible string. I'm suddenly not scared of Dan anymore. This lifeline has robbed him of his power. I have to stop myself from humming the Alleluia chorus while I pack my things. When I pull Kit's photos off the wall, I accidentally tear Dan's precious paw mags. He winces at this destruction and silently sticks his tits back on the wall, and actually I feel a bit sorry for him. Martin is in his 40s with ginger hair and a cheery twinkle in his eye. He gives me a key and exclaims, "Welcome to H213, as though I've come to stay for the weekend in his garden cottage. The cell is spotless, full of indigenous cardboard shelving and hooks made out of matchsticks. The lighting is far softer than the previous cells, with several pages from the Sunday Times magazine stuck over the strip light in the ceiling. Martin explains that this is the prime location on H Wing. We're often the first cells to be unlocked, which means we get to the showers first. The rest of the White Collar Club all live down this end of the landing. Basically, it's the prison's equivalent of Hampstead. Shamefully, I have somehow tumbled in to the most prestigious part of the prison, and I lie on the bed, buzzing with my good fortune." Ladies and gentlemen, and humans who are watching me on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook, this is where we love and leave each other. If you want to be part of the discussion about this part of the book, then you need to hop over to Zoom and we'll see you there. We'll see you next week, 7 o'clock on a Monday. Take care. Bye-bye.